Hello everybody, Little Gamer here, and welcome to a brand new video. I will not lie, this is taking me forever to get out. We had quite a few technical issues getting this one out, as well as the other two you will see later on this week. Well, hopefully that you will see later on this week if you decide to click on them. I have been trying to pre-record a lot of videos. I tend to just record many videos at once, typically 2 or 3 at a time. That way so I can rest throughout the week. But yes, this is the Johnson family, and honestly, I love this family. They're very sweet, they're very wholesome, and honestly, 10 out of 10. I love wholesome families. Stuttering up a storm. This is Coral Johnson. She is 32 years old, and her wife, Allie, is 35 years old. So she's a bit older than Coral. Coral lives with her wife, Allie, and their daughter, Cordelia, in a small home in the countryside of Henford On Bagley. It is a very lovely home that they have, and they do run a small farm, nothing too big, and they're just pretty wholesome. They tend to do things by hand, they prefer it that way, and they're living a very happy and healthy life. Now, you're probably wondering how both Coral and Allie had a child, because she is both biologically theirs. Well, what happened is that they did a form of reproduction where they went to a scientist and he took the bone marrow from Coral and he used it to create cells, and he implanted it in the egg of Allie, and thus they had Cordelia. That is their daughter's name, Cordelia. It's a very lovely name, isn't it? It's quite wonderful, really. I love that name. And that is how they had little Cordelia. Now, they are currently thinking about doing adoption, because they do want to expand their family. And they've been talking it over, they're studying it, they're looking at the pros and cons, and they're taking many classes about childhood development as well as child trauma, as they have heard and know that adoption can be a very traumatic process for every individual involved, but most especially the adoptee, or the child who is adopted in the process. I am sad to say that in the real world, there are people who adopt children, and they adopt these children basically just for those children to be glorified trophies, so that they can go to the local potluck and say, "Oh, look how kind and loving I am. I'm going to I love my child to pieces." But then they don't learn how to do that child's hair, if that child's hair texture is different from their own. They don't bother to try and look at the health conditions that this child has or could have via DNA testing, which I get that can be expensive, but still, you don't know that child's health background or their family, or what risks that they have, that they have a high risk of getting to, and as such, nobody does that. They know that there are parents. I know that there are parents out there who simply get these children in order to basically use them as glorified trophies of the, "Oh, I'm so nice, I'm so sweet, I'm such a Christian woman, look at what I did to my loving family." And these people don't even bother to get to know the kid. They have these expectations for this child, like you are going to be, when in fact that is not a fair expectation. They don't even know of the issues or disabilities or illnesses that this child is predispositioned to, and they don't bother to learn either. And then they don't bother, like I mentioned, they don't bother to learn how to do the child's hair sometimes. And I I have heard from many friends and acquaintances how sometimes their adopted parent would threaten to send them back into foster care or to the adoption agency if they didn't behave perfectly. These people didn't want a child. What they wanted was a doll that they could cart around. And a lot of people treat these children as if they're just free housework, or, for lack of a better terminology, and forgive me if this sounds a bit rough and out of there, but sometimes they just treat these kids as if they're slaves, free labor. Now, I know there's a lot of issues in the South, but I have noticed that it seems to be especially high in the South, where the mistreatment of children, especially adopted children, tends to be high, which is depressing. But these are the statistics that I've noticed and that I've seen personally. I could be wrong, because I'm sure there are plenty unreported cases of child neglect and abuse. In the more northern states, and even in different countries. Hold on, I gotta go let my dog in. I'm back. I'm sorry about that. My dog needed to be let inside the house. But as I was saying, I have heard that a lot of people who have been adopted, that they've had a lot of traumatic experiences, and even more traumatic experiences with the adoptive families. And then there's the fact that sometimes they'll have family members that are actually directly blood related to them try and reach out, and they want nothing to do about that. And then they get guilted for it, saying, "We're your family." Yeah, well, you were never there for me. And then there's the whole, it's a lot of trauma, basically, a lot of emotional things that people end up having to unpack, and sometimes they don't do it in the most healthy ways. So they're doing a lot. And so in my game, I kind of like to implement real life problems into my game. Now, I can't do that mod-wise, like actual-wise, because, the Sims has no consequence for any of the actions. There are no consequences for your actions in The Sims, and there's no story progression at all. There's some now, but it's still not enough for it to actually count for anything. It's basically like a glorified dollhouse, and we're not 8 anymore. We want consequences for actions. But yes, that is basically why Coral and Allie are still speaking about it, and they're learning about it, and they're getting educated. Now, they have had to put those plans and those thoughts and those wishes on hold for now, because Coral's mother and father, Shannon and Franklin Cross, have recently gotten far too old and far too sickly to tend to themselves. They can no longer care for themselves properly. Both of them are starting to develop very, very awful rheumatoid arthritis in all of their joints and fingers, and they can no longer do a lot of the things that they're used to doing, that they did while Coral was growing up. And it's pretty sad for them. They're very upset about it, but they called their daughter. They're like, "Hey, your mother broke her hip. It's been a few months since then, and we can't keep up with it. We can't keep up with our house. Everything's overwhelming us. We don't know what to do." And our neighbor suggested that we look into retirement homes, and you know how we feel about those. And of course, Coral was like, yes, you know what, come move in with us. Let me speak to my wife first, and I'll see if you guys can't come move in with us or live with us for a while, either until your health gets better or permanently until you pass, and we'll tend to you. Let me speak to my wife first, though. And of course, she spoke to her wife, and Allie, she's a very kind sim. Coral's wife, Allie, she's a very loving and kind sim, and she's just like, you know what? We have a spare bedroom. Yes, that was going to be our possible extra child's or second child's room, but your parents are in need, and the child hasn't even been considered yet on paper or anything. So yes, we can care for them. It's no biggie. It's no problem. And of course, Coral gave her wife the biggest hug and kiss ever, like just absolute smooch of a kiss. And they, of course, they didn't want to bring this sudden change into their household without consulting their 8-year-old daughter. um, I know that's not very popular with a lot of people. They're just like, hey, your grandparents are going to stay here for a long while. We don't know whether it's going to be permanent or not. Deal with it. That's basically what a lot of kids get told. But that's not what they did. They brought their daughter in. They sat her down and they explained to her, Grandma and Grandpa, they're a bit sickly, okay? They're getting older and they need some help with things. And they can't live by themselves no more. So they're going to stay here. We don't know whether it's going to be a temporary thing or a permanent thing, okay, baby girl? We understand that this is going to change a lot of things for you. We know this is going to change routine, a lot of things that you're used to, and you're going to get frustrated. We hear you, we understand you will be frustrated, and you will feel a lot of feelings, and it is okay to feel those feelings. But even if you get upset, even if you get angry, even if you just feel overwhelmed, then we can help you with those emotions, but you're going to have to deal with them appropriately. And we understand that that's going to be hard. You're 8 years old. You're not going to be able to do all of it perfectly. You're a kid still, honey. But we must ask that no matter how overwhelmed you get, that you try and use your words, or you go and you cool down, and then come to us and tell us. It's not going to be perfect. We know that there's going to be tears, and you're going to be upset, and you're going to show that you're upset, and that's fine, honey. But this is what Grandma and Grandpa needs, and we can't just leave them, okay? And of course, Cordelia was like, okay, I understand, I get it. And Cordelia actually got pretty excited about it. She's like, oh my God, Grandma and Grandpa coming over? They're like, oh, they're staying for a while, possibly permanently. And that's a lot of change for an 8-year-old, you know? And she's like, that's okay, it's okay. They can stay here. I can give them my soft pillows, and they can be extra comfortable, and I can go make Grandma some stuffed animals. I don't know how to make a quilt, but stuffed animals seem easy. Or like Mima's gonna want some. Mima is the term that a lot of us Southerners use for our grandmothers. They either say Mima or Mama, but I just go Mima because it's what I grew up pronouncing my grandmother's. That's what I grew up calling my Mima, my grandma. It's what I called her growing up. So she's like, Mima's gonna want some fresh roses in her room. She loves roses and daisies, so we gotta get a lot of daisies. And we got to clean the dust off the ceiling. And the 8-year-old just went all full on plan and everything. And the thing is that child knows exactly how her grandmother is. Shannon, that's her grandmother's name, and Franklin, that's her grandfather's name. They're used to having a tidy house. Like, you walk in, you don't see dust anywhere. There's not a speck of it to be seen. And sweet little Cordelia knows that her grandmother does not like dust. So she's like, we gotta dust the ceiling. There's dust up there. We gotta get the shelves. We gotta get up to the tippy tops and the tippy bottoms. That's where we gotta go and clean everything. And we gotta power wash the outside of the house too. And she's just adding more and more to both of her mother's lists of to-dos, to their already lengthy list of to-dos. And they looked at each other like, oh Lord. And honestly, it was kind of cute. It was absolutely adorable to them that their child just immediately went into prepping mode, as they called it. And honestly, I think that's the cutest thing. I get the same way. I mean, I don't clean top to bottom whenever my grandmother comes, because she does visit rarely. She's elderly. She's She had she was one of the first cases in the U.S. of transverse myelitis, and only even of and one of the first fewer cases who actually survived it. So her case actually helped one of my friends who has transverse myelitis and help them, find things on how to help and treat these individuals. So she can't walk real well. Now she still walks. It's more of a dragging and very, very slow walk, but it is walking nonetheless. And they told her she wasn't going to walk, and she's like, all right, bet. I love that woman. She's stubborn as all hell. She doesn't watch my videos or does anything with the internet. It's 2021 and we just got her to use Facebook, so I don't think she'll actually see this. And I know if she hears me cursing up a storm, she'll be like, Divya Lee, you watch that language. I'll get my mouth popped. It doesn't matter that I'm a 19-year-old legal adult. She'll pop my mouth. She'll beat my ass halfway to Sunday. That's what grandmas do. But whenever I have people staying over, I go into deep cleaning mode. There can't be a speck of dust nowhere. I gotta have the entire house looking like it's off in a store. Like, how when you walk into a furniture store, there's these like little previews of what the furniture will look like if you style it a certain way. I want my house to look like that. You can ask my mom. I get that way, and I panic about it. My mama says I'm working myself up in a tizzy, so what she tells me I'm doing, but I can't help it. It's gotta be clean. It's not that I fear them judging me, but I don't want them thinking I live in a super messy house. Now, I do keep my dog and my cat inside. I've got like 8 cats, but I only keep one of the cats inside and the dog inside, so there's a lot of animal hair everywhere. You can't, no matter how much you sweep it or vacuum it, it's always there. So I've just sort of given up on sweeping it all up every day. But yes, she works her sweet little Cordelia. She'll work herself up in a tizzy, and she was just making sure everything was right. And she still, every afternoon, whenever her papa, which is her grandfather, what we call a grandfather down here in the South, whenever her papa comes back into the house, because he likes to go and piddle around in the garden and, do something to make himself feel useful. Sometimes, don't tell Franklin I said this, but sometimes Coral will go and she'll mess up her lawnmower a little bit. Nothing that's, expensive to fix, but, she'll just make some things look wrong, and she'll be like, hey Dad, I think I messed up this fucking lawnmower. Could you take a look at it and see what it is? And he'll be like, oh yeah, sure. And he gets so happy about that. He loves fixing things. So he'll go out and he'll fix the lawnmower at least once or twice every 5 to 6 months, and he's content for the day. But every time he comes in, even if he ain't done much, but if it's the afternoon, she'll go, hey, Papa, do you need me to draw you a bath? You need me to fix you a bath? You want some supper? Or some tea? Or maybe some coffee? Mama says you like coffee. And he'll be like, oh, no, baby doll, I'm fine, Pumpkin, I'm fine. My papa used to call me Pumpkin. He passed a few years ago, and I miss him. But my papa used to call me Pumpkin, so I like to think that maybe Franklin calls her his Pumpkin. It's a term of endearment, how some grandparents go, oh, look at she's my little sweetie, my honey, my love life, my little ladybug, stuff like that. He calls her his Pumpkin. She's his Pumpkin, and she's the first grandchild on both sides of the family, so yeah, she's real loved. Though Allie's parents aren't very accepting of the fact that she's a lesbian who's married, but they can either accept it or stay the fuck out of her life. She don't care. They're missing out on Cordelia. Cordelia isn't missing out on them, She already's got a set of grandparents who love her. But yeah, and then she'll go, sweet Cordelia will go into the kitchen where her grandmother usually stays around, because, her grandmother just loves to cook, loves to bake. If you can't find her, look in the kitchen. That's basically how it goes. But she'll go in the kitchen and be like, Mama, can I help you? I can peel the potatoes. I know how to peel the potatoes. My mama taught me how to peel the potatoes. Or, I can go wash the eggs for you. Do you need me to go collect some eggs? Do you need any sugar? I know where the grocery store is, and I can walk up there and get you some sugar, Mama. She loves helping her Mama and her Papa out. So Cordelia's just very sweet, and she's very happy that both of her grandparents are living with her. And and vice versa, they're so happy to be so close and being with their grandchild. Franklin, every time he leaves the house, which is about once or twice a week, he'll go up to the grocery store or to the gas station, because I like to think that maybe Henford On Bagley has a gas station that's just like a little farther away from the main area of the town, but close enough to where if you're driving your car, you can go get some gas. It's not too out of the way, And he'll bring her home a bug juice and some candy, or a prize, as my papa would call it. And he always brings her home the blue bug juice. I don't know what y'all were thinking about the red bug juice, but the blue bug juice is absolutely supreme. I don't take any criticisms, and I ain't taking no comments today. You leave your bug juice wars at home. But he'll always bring her something, and he'll take her fishing. He'll take her to the pond, and they'll go fishing, and she absolutely loves fishing with her papa. And sometimes her mama will go with him to help him go fishing, because her mama likes to fish occasionally too. Not too often, but she don't mind it. It's fun, And she loves spending time with her grandparents. And the fact that both of her grandparents are here actually gave Coral the opportunity to accept a promotion from work, where she works a few more hours than she usually does. She stays late and finishes extra paperwork, and she makes a good amount of money to pay for the land taxes and everything, and pay for the farm, and to save up for Cordelia to either go to college if that's what she wants, or for her to go get her own home when she's an adult. That's what she's saving up for. But yes, that is the Johnson family. We are coming up now closely to the end of the video, so I'm just going to tell you a few quick smidgen things, small little dabs, dabble do ya, about the family that I didn't mention beforehand. Cordelia actually does have an uncle on Coral's side. Now, when the grandparents first started realizing that they couldn't care for themselves, they called their eldest son. Because I don't know how it is most places, but I know down in the South, typically, at least where I live in the South, it's the oldest son who's expected to care for family issues and stuff like that. But he couldn't do that. Now, we're really close at the end of the video, so I'm afraid that I am going to have to end this video here. If you guys want to download them, they will be under the hashtag LittleGamerSims, and I hope you all had a delightful day. Bye-bye!